2 questions. Do you like 80s hair metal? Do you further like horror movies? It's time for another episode of BLUteeful. '86's Trick or Treat finally gets a proper 4K USD and gorgeous packaging, and it's already gone. Sorry. This was pretty crazy. So I've been hearing about this for years. It's been on my radar. I've been just excited to get my hands on it for 2 reasons. 1, phenomenal film, which we're going to talk about. But 2, it's also from Synapse Films. Some people say Synapse. I'm saying Synapse. I don't know if that's just a Canadian thing, but I'm going to roll with it. Any release from Synapse is an all-time must-have if you like the film. I'm not one of those collectors that'll go out and buy things I don't really enjoy just because of the packaging or to have them look awesome on the shelf. I have to really enjoy the film. But Synapse has done some unbelievably amazing work, from Dario Argento works like Suspiria and Phenomena to some really underground stuff like Massacre at Central High. Usually when I find out they're releasing something, I will go back and revisit it to see if I need it, because I know when I get my hands on it, it takes them forever. 4 freaking years, I think, for this one. And I'm still waiting for Deadly Spawn. But it'll be awesome. So when this little baby hit the internets, Synapse's website actually crashed, which I've never seen happen in physical media collecting. They have 2 other companies, Orbitz and Diabolic DVD, that also carry their products. They were both struggling to keep up with the demand. 6,666 copies at $66.66, which, if anybody out there wants to know the US to Canadian conversion, that's roughly, $12,000. I'm not really, it's a joke, but it's close. And they're gone. Their subsidiaries, Diabolic, Orbitz, sold out. Then Synapse itself. Wanted to get this done early. I didn't expect them to be gone that quick, but hey, it is what it is. And now you can buy them on the internet for a totally reasonable price, where nobody's going to price gouge any physical media collector out there, because the world is nice. So we're going to do this in 3 parts. We're going to talk about the film, we're going to talk about the extras, then we're going to talk about the quality of the overall presentation and packaging. Let's go. So your story, a loser kind of high school kid who's up in the metal love in the 80s. His favorite guy ever is Sammy Kerr. Leads kind of a Motley Crue-esque rock band. He calls himself Ragman because I guess he thinks it's cool. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe I missed that in the movie. Has a girl popular at school who is actually pretty nice to him that he really crushes on, but seems terminally out of reach. This Sammy Kerr ends up dying in a horrific hotel fire. He, through the power of Gene Simmons, gets his hands on the last recorded single from this singer. And when he plays it, Sammy Kerr comes back to engage in supernatural dealings with the people around him and kind of engage in some high school revenge, and also has a demon pet dog thing. Anyway, this is an absolutely great 80s horror film. Now, it depends what you're looking for. Obviously, there's different horror for everybody out there. This is not one of those films that you're going to enjoy for its excess, for its over-the-top violence, sex. There's a little sprinkle of that for sure, but this is a much more of a well-made, well-shot, genuinely heartfelt, a little bit funny, unbelievable soundtrack of a film that if you haven't watched, when you do at some point, you're going to be really just upset that you didn't get your hands on this release if you enjoy collecting this stuff. But if you haven't seen this film, highly recommend it. It's a real gem from that era that really didn't get much love on DVD or at all on Blu-ray. And my goodness, some of the cover art for this film, I don't know who designed it. I mean, they put all this time and effort into a soundtrack that is phenomenal, and then it had the most basic album artwork. And so with a Synapse release, one of the things you can really expect is a lot of care to be put into some of the features. Usually there is an unbelievable making of documentary, and this is no exception. Red Shirt Pictures partnered with them for this release, and they have a proper almost hour and 30-minute documentary. Part of the price tag on this and the discussion online was, holy crap, this is expensive. You got to realize we're talking multiple years in development. The restoration process itself takes a ton of time, but also gathering these extras. There's some really heartfelt stuff here about one of the actors that passed away in the film that played Sammy Kerr. There's also that proper full-length documentary where they got all these people back together to talk about the film, from the special effects to the actors to the director. Just an all-around nice, not the most selected features I've ever seen. All right, there's some releases from Vinegar Syndrome that are stuffed. Arrow had like a Hellraiser box set where they just put stuff on there for the sake of having it, where you had like 200 features, and honestly I cared about like 6 of them. But I really enjoyed what they had here. Also, this film's directed by Charles Martin Smith, who's an actor who you probably don't necessarily remember, but if I post a picture here, you'll be like, oh, that guy that I've seen in a gazillion things. Director-wise, other than some television, all I can see that he really ended up directing that I'm kind of new other than this was Dolphin's Tale 1 and 2. So that's quite the repertoire. He does a really good job here. It doesn't feel cheap. It feels like a proper budgeted 80s film. And I mentioned that soundtrack too. So this was done by a band, I think if I remember correctly, from the UK called Fast Wave, who is very much a hair metal, like in the vein of a Wasp, a Motley Crue. They did the whole soundtrack for this film. And it just brims with energy. Like, it feels like you're in that era, like you've listened to this band 1,000 times. It's so familiar. It really adds to the film. This release, this actually comes with a CD of the music from the film. I really like that because a lot of these films, it's these soundtracks, like say some of the old Italian horror stuff with Goblin soundtracks and stuff. It's actually really hard to get your hands on that music outside of like some pretty expensive collector's vinyl editions. So that's a really nice feature. And then going into the overall packaging, I'm not going to break down every single part of that. I mean, if you pay a whole bunch of money to get your hands on this stuff, like, you gotta have some of that fun yourself. It's your standard slipcase. There's 3 covers. This was just the one I liked because it had pretty much everything that I loved in the movie on the cover. My friend also got a cover. He picked a different one that he really enjoyed with the more, I think it was a Justin Osborne as an artist too. If you don't know who Justin Osborne is, if you've ever seen a t-shirt and thought, my God, that's an awesome looking horror movie t-shirt, he probably designed it. You've got your book, your poster, just a traditional collection, not on the cheap side. They all look great. And the quality of the restoration, look, 2 things about this. This does have scenes that have that kind of soft glow that I've seen a lot of 80s films have, where the lights kind of seem to bleed out a little bit. Just something they use in the actual lensing or the film stock they've used in shooting it. You see it creep up in some 80s films. So that's here. But this is by far the best that this film will ever and has ever looked. There are scenes in here where you can really see how great this restoration is. And there's also some scenes where it won't stand out as much just because of the quality of that scene. But it's still amazing. And the sound, just my stereo loved this movie. It did. All around, as a physical release, I mean, to be expected, this to me is a 9 out of 10. There's a couple of films out there that just for the sheer level of time or what that film is, I'm giving this a 9 out of 10. For a sheer physical release, these slipcase size editions, I think as a whole, I'll cap them at like 8 or 9. Because at 10, you really have to save for a movie that has the restoration, the features, but then also some sort of elaborate, amazing, larger than usual packaging at a reasonable, not going to require rent money for it for a month. So I think this, just being a Synapse release, the anticipation, how the internet responded, how great it was to actually get my hands on it and go through the features, I'm going to give it a proper 9 out of 10. This is an absolute top shelf for that size of release. And I cannot wait for the next thing for Synapse. To anybody out there who got this, congratulations. To everybody out, there will be a standard 4K edition, something they weren't planning on doing, but just showing how awesome some of these smaller companies are when these giant corporations just fail to really connect with the physical community or just their community in general. They realized instantly that a lot of people were, 1, not going to be able to afford this, and 2, we're going to be heartbroken to not be able to get their hands on it. So they announced they were going to be doing a standard 4K, something they did not plan to do. They've moved that into their 2025 schedule. So no fear. If you just want to get your hands on this film, and honestly, like $66 with shipping for all these territories, even within the States, but outside of the States, is just a lot of money. There will be that standard probably $30, $40 release dropping soon, with cost a lot less to ship. It can come in the small box. Till then, to everybody who's been watching, really appreciate it. to my 21.5 viewers and one or two of those videos that have surprisingly gotten a lot more. I appreciate it. Thanks for giving me a few minutes out of your day. Hopefully you're as passionate and you enjoy this crazy world of physical media that we're kind of living in. I was hearing the other day that physical media, in regards to a few releases, had outdone streaming of those same releases or something along those lines for the first time in like years. So hey, we're taking it back. Plus, how much freaking money does it cost for all these streaming services? I feel like my grandpa or my grandma would be talking to me about, I'm going to be talking to people in a few years about once for $68 a month, you had all the channels and the sports and the movies for $68, but people said it was too much money. They said it was too much. And now we pay $480 a month for 1/3 of that. Your uncle pays $1,200 and has it all. You remember, we did this to you. Till next.